from the federal judge overseeing the case involving deportation flights to El Salvador. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg says he found probable cause to hold the Trump administration in criminal contempt. The judge says it's for violating his orders to turn around those planes that were carrying migrants to El Salvador. So let's bring in CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen for much more on this. Jake, what can you tell us? What have you learned?
Well, in Judge Boasberg's scathing 40-plus page memo, he writes, "The Constitution does not tolerate willful disobedience of judicial orders, especially by officials of a coordinate branch who have sworn an oath to uphold it." The order at the center of this came on March 15th when Judge James Boasberg, after blocking the deportation temporarily of 5 men, expanded that block of people who the Trump administration was attempting to deport under the Alien Enemies Act to over 200 people on 2 different flights that were on their way to El Salvador. He ordered those planes that were on their way down there so that prisoners could be put to that Supermax prison, footage of which from that day you're seeing on your screen right now.
Dr. John here, and today we're not holding back. A federal judge has issued criminal contempt charges against members of Trump's inner circle, threatening prison time and financial ruin for those who followed presidential orders. The constitutional earthquake is a full-blown meltdown that could bring down some of the most powerful figures in the administration. Now, you might be thinking, is this about that crypto guy who got locked up? That's what a lot of people are saying online, that he was innocent, that he served 4 months for nothing, that the whole thing was a setup. But let me stop you right there, because you clearly don't understand the full scope of what's actually happening here. This goes way beyond cryptocurrency or any single individual. What we're witnessing is something far more significant, far more dangerous, and far more unprecedented than anything involving digital currencies. This is about the very foundations of American democracy being tested like never before. Here's the real story, and I'm going to break it down for you in a way that makes sense.
The planes did not stop, and they were outside of U.S. airspace at the time, the Department of Justice argues, and thus the judge had no authority to order those planes turned around. As a result of this, the judge and the government's lack of explanation over multiple court hearings of why they didn't listen to the order and who, Mugo, specifically at the White House or Trump administration, ordered those planes to continue despite his order. Really, we're at a break point in terms of the federal engagement between the federal judiciary here and the White House. The White House now has to be held accountable, Boasberg says, for not turning these 2 planes around. He's ordering contempt proceedings to officially begin, saying he wants to find out, either the government can admit to who at the White House didn't turn those planes around, or he will get to the bottom of it through potentially live testimony on the stand or further ordered depositions in this case.
Jake, I have to ask you, though, what could be the consequences here?
Well, if the Department of Justice, I should back up, the Department of Justice has to agree potentially to even hear this case and prosecute themselves, essentially, in terms of this criminal conduct.
Federal Judge James Boasberg, a respected jurist sitting in Washington, D.C., just made the explosive decision to pursue criminal contempt charges against multiple high-ranking Trump administration officials. Not civil contempt, which is basically a slap on the wrist. Criminal contempt, the kind that leaves permanent marks on your record and can physically put you behind bars. The reason? These officials allegedly violated a direct federal court order that was specifically designed to halt controversial deportation practices under something known as the Alien Enemies Act. Now, if you're not familiar with the Alien Enemies Act, don't worry, most Americans aren't. It's this ancient piece of legislation that dates all the way back to 1798, when America was still figuring out how to be a country. We're talking about a law that was written when John Adams was president, when the White House hadn't even been built yet. It gave the president wartime powers to detain or deport people from enemy nations. Think about that for a second.
If they don't agree to do that, Judge Boasberg argues that he has the power to appoint someone who will prosecute the Department of Justice for not listening to his order. Who that is obviously remains to be seen. We'll see how the Department of Justice and the Trump administration react to this, but any enforcement mechanism, whether it's a fine, whether it's potentially sanctions on someone of some kind, would have to be enforced by the U.S. Marshal Service and the Department of Justice. But Judge James Boasberg, despite the Supreme Court ruling that his temporary restraining order blocking these deportations deportations, that order was struck down, but he says the contempt proceedings that were started in that case before the Supreme Court's order are going to continue, and he's going to get to the bottom of this. And he really cited the boasts by the Trump administration after those planes landed, saying that they wouldn't turn that around, and all of the things cited in court by the Trump administration, basically saying, Judge Boasberg, you don't have the authority to even ask questions about this because this is a national security issue and we're dealing with foreign governments. You're entitled to no information. Boasberg said that's not true. He's going to get to the bottom of this situation.
Wow. Much more to come out of this one, I'm sure. Jake Rosen, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again, by the way, in just a few minutes.
This is a law from the 1700s being dusted off and used in 2025 to justify mass deportations. Trump's legal team looked at this antique statute and saw an opportunity. They argued that the situation at the southern border constituted an invasion, that drug cartels and illegal immigration posed a national security threat equivalent to actual war. And therefore, the Alien Enemies Act gave the president sweeping authority to detain and deport people without the normal due process procedures that Americans take for granted. No hearings, no appeals, no nothing. Just round them up and ship them out. Legal scholars immediately started screaming that this was an astronomical overreach. They pointed out that the Alien Enemies Act was designed for actual wars against declared foreign enemies, not for peacetime immigration enforcement. But Trump's Justice Department barreled forward anyway.
For more on how the White House is responding to all of this, let's bring in CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Zhang. Weijia, any reaction from the president on his administration possibly being held in contempt of court right now?
We have not heard directly from President Trump, and we have not even heard directly from the White House about their reaction to this ruling, even though we have asked. So it could come up at any time. But so far, they, are remaining silent about this. But it is very possible that the president could weigh in. He has been adamant that his administration did nothing wrong because he did use a wartime law to basically say that he's able to do this because he claims that the U.S. is at war with Venezuela, and that's why they had to deport these criminal migrants. War, not in the literal sense of a traditional war, but the war on illegal immigration and drugs and violence. And so they, in the past, have been extremely bullish on this in saying that they haven't done anything wrong and saying that the judge, as Jake laid out,
ignoring the constitutional concerns and the warnings from legal experts. Civil rights groups sued, arguing that using a wartime law for immigration enforcement violated the Constitution's guarantees of due process and equal protection. They said this gave the president dictatorial powers that the founders never intended. And Judge Boasberg listened to those arguments. He issued an injunction ordering Trump's administration to immediately halt all deportations under the Alien Enemies Act until the legal questions could be properly examined. This is standard judicial procedure. When there's a serious constitutional question, courts often put things on hold until they can fully examine the issue. But here's where things went completely off the rails. Trump's inner circle looked at that federal court order and decided it didn't apply to them. They kept conducting deportation flights. They kept using the Alien Enemies Act to justify their actions. They looked at a direct judicial command and essentially gave it the middle finger.
Does not have this jurisdiction to order the government to do things when they are literally in the air.
And we know one of the people on those flights was Kilmar Abrego Garcia. A hearing on his case was held just yesterday. And today, Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen arrived in El Salvador with one goal. Let's listen to what he had to say. We'll talk to you on the other side.
As I've said before, the goal of my visit is to talk to people here about the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I told his wife and his family I would do everything possible to bring him home, and we're going to keep working at this until we're successful. I also hope to have the chance to meet with him, but we'll have a better idea if that works out a little later on.
So, Weijia, what is the next step here? We know the judge is giving both sides until next week for depositions.
Well, the senator says he wants to talk to people about Abrego Garcia's possible release, but the person he would have to talk to is the president of El Salvador, who was just here at the White House this week and made it very explicitly clear that he has no intention of releasing him back to the U.S. In fact, he used the word smuggling a terrorist back to the United States. And so the senator can go there.
Now, ignoring a court order is serious business. In our legal system, the judiciary has the power to enforce its orders through contempt proceedings. If someone violates a court order, they can be held in contempt. There are two types of contempt. Civil contempt is about forcing compliance, like saying, do what the court says or we'll fine you until you cooperate. Criminal contempt is something else entirely. It's a punishment. It's the court saying you willfully and deliberately violated our order, and now you're going to face criminal penalties, fines, jail time, a permanent criminal record. That's what Judge Boasberg is pursuing here. Criminal contempt. He's not just trying to force compliance anymore. He's trying to punish the people who defied his order. The judge found probable cause to pursue these contempt actions. Probable cause means the judge believes there's enough evidence to show that officials willfully violated the injunction. Not accidentally, not through some bureaucratic miscommunication, willfully, on purpose, with full knowledge that they were defying a federal court order. That's a devastating finding because it means these officials can't simply claim, oops, we didn't understand what the court said. The judge is saying, no, you knew exactly what you were doing and you did it anyway. The court gave the administration 1 week to comply or face individual criminal referrals. Individual. That means specific people are going to get named. Specific officials are going to get charged. This isn't about the administration as a whole. This is about holding individual people accountable for their actions. So now the question becomes, who's going to take the fall? Who actually authorized these deportations after the court said to stop? Was it Homeland Security officials? Was it Justice Department lawyers? Was it White House advisors? Was it Trump himself? The court wants names. It wants to know who's responsible. And whoever gets named is going to become a defendant in criminal contempt proceedings. Their careers will be over, their legal bills will be astronomical, and they could end up in jail. The panic inside the administration right now must be absolutely off the charts. These are people who thought they were untouchable, who believed that serving the president protected them from consequences, who operated under the assumption that loyalty would shield them from legal jeopardy. And now, they're waking up to the terrifying reality that they could be facing criminal charges. White House spokesperson Stephen Chung came out swinging, as you would expect. He called Judge Boasberg's decision judicial overreach. He insisted Trump acted within his national security authority. He promised an immediate appeal. All the usual talking points designed to calm the base and project strength. But here's the thing that everyone needs to understand. Appeals take time, months, sometimes years. But that April 23rd deadline is in days, not months. Trump's team doesn't have the luxury of appealing their way out of this before people start getting named in contempt proceedings. They're backed into a corner, and the walls are closing in fast. This whole situation is exposing a massive rift between Trump's executive branch and the judiciary. We're talking about a separation of powers crisis. The courts say one thing, the president says another. And when the president's people ignore what the courts say, that's when the entire system starts to break down. That's when we have to ask uncomfortable questions about whether we're still a nation of laws or whether we've become a nation where the president can do whatever he wants and face zero consequences. Because right now, it's looking like Trump's inner circle thought they could ignore the courts and get away with it. And Judge Boasberg just said, not on my watch. He's drawn a line in the sand. He's asserted judicial authority. And he's putting the entire administration on notice that no one is above the law. Think about the timing for a moment. The 2026 midterms are fast approaching, and immigration was already going to be a central campaign issue. Trump's entire political brand has been built on tough immigration policies. Build the wall, secure the border, deport illegal immigrants. His base loves that stuff. It's his signature issue. It's what propelled him to the presidency in the first place. But now, his immigration crackdown is landing his own officials in legal jeopardy. The optics are absolutely terrible. Democrats are going to use this as proof that Trump operates above the law, that he doesn't respect the Constitution, that he's willing to sacrifice his own people to push his agenda. And Republicans are going to have to defend an administration that's literally defying court orders. Good luck with that on the campaign trail. This isn't just a legal story. This is a political earthquake. Trump's inner circle is collapsing under the pressure. Officials are panicking, lawyers are scrambling, and a federal judge is holding the entire administration's feet to the fire. We're about to see if anyone in Trump's orbit is willing to take the fall for him. We're about to see if these officials will comply with the court or double down on defiance. And we're about to see if the judicial branch still has any teeth when it comes to checking executive power. This is the story dominating Washington right now, and it's only going to get messier from here. Now let's talk about the legal concept of qualified immunity, because this is where things get even more complicated for Trump's people. Qualified immunity basically says government officials can't be held personally liable for actions they take while doing their jobs, as long as they don't violate clearly established law. It's meant to protect officials from being sued for every decision they make. It allows them to do their jobs without constantly worrying about legal repercussions. But here's the catch. Qualified immunity doesn't protect you if you willfully violate a court order. If a judge explicitly tells you to stop doing something and you keep doing it anyway, you don't get immunity. You're on the hook personally. So these officials can't hide behind their government positions. They can't claim, I was just following orders. They're going to have to answer for their actions individually. That's causing a massive problem for Trump's inner circle, because nobody wants to be the fall guy. Nobody wants to be the one who goes to jail so Trump can keep his immigration policies going. So what happens? People start lawyering up. People start pointing fingers at each other. People start looking for ways to protect themselves, even if it means throwing someone else under the bus. The unity that Trump's team might have had, that's crumbling. The loyalty that kept people in line, that's evaporating. Because when criminal charges are on the table, self-preservation kicks in. And right now, self-preservation means complying with the court order, even if Trump doesn't want you to. The White House tried to put on a brave face with Stephen Chung's statement. He called Judge Boasberg's decision judicial overreach. He insisted the president acted within his national security authority. He promised an immediate appeal. But an appeal doesn't stop the contempt proceedings. An appeal doesn't protect individuals from being named and charged. An appeal is a long-term legal strategy, but the April 23rd deadline is immediate. Trump's team needs to make a choice right now. Comply or face criminal charges. There's no middle ground, there's no delay. It's comply or pay the price. And this brings us to the bigger constitutional question at the heart of all this. What happens when the executive branch and the judicial branch directly clash? What happens when a president believes he has the authority to do something and a court says, no, you don't? In theory, our system of checks and balances is supposed to handle this. The courts check executive power, the executive branch respects court orders, and everyone stays in their lane. But what if the executive branch doesn't respect court orders? What if they just keep doing what they want, regardless of what judges say? That's when we have a constitutional crisis. That's when the entire system starts to break down. And that's exactly what Judge Boasberg is trying to prevent by moving forward with criminal contempt charges. He's sending a powerful message that the courts still matter, that you can't just ignore us, that we have power too. And if you defy our orders, there will be consequences. It's a test of judicial authority, a test of whether courts can still check presidential power in the Trump era. Because if Trump's officials can defy a court order and face no real consequences, then what's stopping future presidents from doing the same thing? What's stopping any administration from ignoring any court ruling they don't like? That's the slippery slope we're staring down right now. Democrats are, of course, having a field day with this. They're saying it's proof that Trump doesn't respect the rule of law, that he thinks he's above the Constitution, that he's willing to sacrifice his own people to push his agenda. They're using this as ammunition heading into the 2026 midterms. They're going to run ads saying Trump's administration is so lawless that federal judges are holding his officials in criminal contempt. How can you trust these people to govern? It's a powerful political attack, and it's based on an actual court ruling. So it's not just partisan spin, it's grounded in concrete legal actions. Republicans, on the other hand, are in a really tough spot. Some of them are defending Trump, saying the courts are overreaching, saying this is just more political persecution, but others are quietly distancing themselves. They're not rushing to defend officials who defy court orders. They're not jumping on TV to back Trump's position because they know how bad this looks. They know that defending lawlessness is a losing political strategy. So they're staying quiet and hoping this blows over before it becomes a bigger campaign issue. But it's not going to blow over. Not with criminal charges hanging over Trump's inner circle, not with an April 23rd deadline looming. This story is going to dominate headlines for weeks, maybe months. The Trump administration's response so far has been defiant. Stephen Chung's statement was all about fighting back, appealing, not backing down. But behind the scenes, reports suggest there's panic, there's chaos, there's infighting about what to do next. Because complying with the court order means admitting they were wrong. It means backing down on a key immigration policy. It means looking weak. But not complying means criminal charges. It means officials going to jail. It means a prolonged legal battle that could cripple the administration. Neither option is good. Both options have massive downsides, and Trump's team has to choose one within days. This is what happens when you govern through defiance. When you build your entire political brand on fighting the system, when you tell your supporters that the courts are biased and the judges are corrupt, eventually you hit a wall. Eventually, a judge says, enough. And now Trump's facing that wall. His inner circle is facing that wall. And they're about to find out if defying the courts was worth it. Criminal contempt charges against Trump officials mean personal prosecution, fines, and possible jail time, forcing them to choose between loyalty and self-preservation. When individuals face real consequences, loyalty breaks down and inner circles collapse, as no one wants to go to jail for someone else. This contempt ruling exposes a fundamental tension in how Trump governs. Trump's entire political approach is based on the idea that he's strong, that he doesn't back down, that he fights everyone who opposes him. The courts say, stop, he keeps going. The media says it's wrong, he doubles down. Critics say it's illegal, he calls them haters, and moves forward anyway. That approach works politically with his base. They love that he's a fighter. They love that he doesn't apologize. But legally, that approach is a disaster because courts don't care about political posturing. They don't care about approval ratings. They care about the law. And when you violate their orders, they come after you hard. So now Trump's facing this impossible choice. Does he tell his officials to comply with Judge Boasberg's order? If he does, he looks weak. He looks like he backed down. His base might see it as surrender. But if he doesn't, if he tells his people to keep defying the court, then those people are going to face criminal charges. They're going to have their lives ruined, and eventually they're going to stop listening to him because self-preservation kicks in. Either way, Trump loses. Either he looks weak or his inner circle falls apart. There's no good outcome here. That's what happens when you govern through confrontation and defiance. Eventually, you hit a situation where confrontation and defiance destroy you. Let's talk about the separation of powers crisis that this represents. The United States government is built on this idea that power is divided among three branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. Each branch has its own role. Each branch checks the others. The courts check the executive branch by declaring actions unconstitutional or issuing injunctions. The executive branch respects those court orders because that's how the system works. But what happens when an administration just ignores court orders? What happens when they say, we don't care what you rule, we're doing it anyway? That's when the entire system is threatened. Because if the executive branch can ignore the judiciary, then the judiciary has no power. And if the judiciary has no power, then there's no check on executive authority. And if there's no check on executive authority, then we don't have a democracy anymore. We have an authoritarian system where the president can do whatever he wants. Judge Boasberg is trying to prevent that outcome by pursuing criminal contempt charges. He's asserting judicial authority. He's saying, you will respect our orders or face consequences. It's a critical moment for the rule of law, because if Trump's officials defy this order and face no real consequences, then every future administration will know they can ignore courts too. The precedent being set right now will determine how much power courts have for generations to come. That's not hyperbole, that's reality. What happens in the next few days and weeks will shape American governance for decades. This is absolutely going to be a major issue in the 2026 midterms. Immigration was already going to be a central campaign issue. Trump's been running on border security and tough deportation policies since 2015. His base loves it. It's his signature issue. But now his immigration crackdown has landed his officials in criminal jeopardy. It's exposed his administration to accusations of lawlessness. It's given Democrats ammunition to say Trump doesn't respect the Constitution, that he operates above the law, that he's willing to break the rules to get what he wants. Those are damaging accusations, and they're backed up by an actual federal court ruling. This isn't partisan spin. This is a judge saying your administration violated the law. Republicans running in swing districts are going to have a really hard time defending this. They can't just say, well, Trump was tough on immigration, so it's okay that he ignored court orders. That doesn't fly with moderate voters. That doesn't fly with independents. So what do? Do they distance themselves from Trump and risk losing his base? Or do they defend him and risk losing moderates? Either way, they're in a bad spot, and Democrats are going to exploit that ruthlessly. Expect to see ads with Judge Boasberg's quotes about blatant disregard for court orders. Expect to see campaign speeches about Trump's lawlessness. Expect immigration to be framed not as a policy debate, but as a constitutional crisis. This is crucial. This story is about accountability. For years, Trump has operated under the assumption that he and his people are above consequences, that they can do whatever they want and face no real repercussions. Mueller investigation survived it. Impeachments survived them. Criminal charges delayed or dismissed. January 6th, no conviction. Trump has dodged accountability at every turn, and his inner circle has watched that. They've learned that loyalty to Trump protects them, that Trump will fight for them, that they won't actually face consequences as long as they stay loyal. But now that calculation is changing because criminal contempt charges are real, they're immediate, they're personal, and Trump can't make them go away with a tweet or a rally speech. So officials are realizing, wait, I could actually go to jail for this. I could actually lose everything. And suddenly loyalty doesn't seem worth it anymore. Suddenly, compliance with the court order seems like the smart move. This is the first real moment where Trump's inner circle is facing consequences that Trump can't shield them from. And it's causing that circle to collapse. People are panicking. People are looking for exits. People are protecting themselves. The solidarity that kept Trump's team together is breaking down under the threat of criminal prosecution. Will the Trump administration comply with Judge Boasberg's order by the April 23rd deadline? Honestly, they probably will, because the alternative is too catastrophic. The alternative is high-ranking officials getting named in criminal contempt proceedings. The alternative is a media firestorm about Trump officials being prosecuted for defying courts. The alternative is a prolonged legal battle that overshadows everything else the administration wants to accomplish. So yeah, they'll probably comply. They'll probably stop the deportations under the Alien Enemies Act, at least temporarily while they appeal. And Trump will spin it as, we're taking the high road, we're letting the legal process play out, we're confident we'll win on appeal. But make no mistake, it's a retreat, it's a defeat. It's Trump backing down because the consequences of not backing down are too severe. And once that happens, once Trump's inner circle sees that defiance has limits, once they see that courts can actually hold them accountable, everything changes. The aura of invincibility disappears, the fear of consequences returns, and officials start making different calculations about what orders they're willing to follow. Judge Boasberg's contempt ruling could be a turning point, holding officials personally accountable for defying court orders and restoring respect for judicial authority. The April 23 deadline will test whether the system's checks and balances still work, or if executive power is now beyond limits.